Welcome to the second round of the Knuckle Dragon Billy Goat review on this beautiful Sunday morning. I am Josh.
I'm Michael.
Hey, Michael. Good morning. Glad to talk to you again. We had about a 20-minute interlude in between shows here, but this morning you brought up a pretty good topic, and I think you'd give it a little bit more justice than I would describing it. So, Mike, if you would, could you please describe our topic for this second podcast of the day?
Yeah, not a problem, man. So I'm typically the arguer. I enjoy arguing with people. Sometimes just out of enjoyment, other times because I do truly believe they're wrong and they don't understand that they're wrong. And I also like playing devil's advocate. So whether I agree with something or not, I can always argue the opposite side. So I just enjoy doing that overall. But lately, it's 2019. This happened real big in 2018 as well. Probably over the past 5 years, it's gotten real bad, with the kickoff of social media just being really rampant. A lot of people are not having fact-based arguments. They're either emotional-based or opinionated, where they're arguing their opinion and stating it as if it's a fact. Same with emotions. And I'm just so tired of it. It happens all the time. Yeah, man, it happens all the time on Facebook. And I've got people that do it to me face to face. They're taking it away from the social media realm, and they're doing it in the RL, in the real life. And it's extremely obnoxious. Yeah, man. And it's just extremely obnoxious to me. So I wanted to kind of vent a little bit, have a little podcast session about it, and see what your opinions are on it. I'm pretty sure we're going to end up agreeing on it because you and I, we argue in similar ways.
Yeah, we really do. Yeah, we really do. And I guess to start this off is that, both of us have differing views on a lot of different topics. Obviously, that's why our show works. However, we're both here's what I see with the common arguments, and I'm going to just do strictly Facebook, strictly social media. Okay. And here's what I see on it. Right, is that first of all, you bring up a very good point. People argue certain situations not based on facts. Now, is everything that I argue on Facebook factually correct? Probably not. However, if you're like, hey man, find me a link to this, I'm going to sit there and find a link. And if I know if it's an important enough topic, I'm going to sit there and cite the link. Dun, 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 dun. So you could read it yourself, because I've done that before. I've done stuff where people are like, oh my God, you're so much out of your element here, Donnie. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Here, let's look at this and go from there. But with the evolution of the internet, and especially Facebook in particular, I've seen this, you said 5 years, hell, 8 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, my cousin might listen to this and he might not, but anyways, a lot of things get misconstrued on social media. Okay. And essentially his girlfriend at the time or whatever is like, oh my God, we never go out and this and that, we're going here, and the thing is, like, they would go out like once a month or a couple times a month or something like that, which there's nothing wrong with that, but she played it off as, well, we never go out and this and that or the other. And I was like, yeah, we never do either, because I'm working all the time. And it basically escalated into her calling me like a part-time dad because of the time I was working somewhere else. And dude, and like it just went like, and at that time I wasn't very tactful. So, dude, I just let it ride, man. And I went on emotions, and that kind of, for me, kind of started the whole, well, if I'm going to have an argument on Facebook, I'm going to be factually sound in it. And I don't think a lot of people take that route, Mike. And especially, I guess going forward here is that, especially with the election, like,
oh yeah,
dude, Facebook, like, I wanted to delete it with the election of Trump. And not because Trump was elected president. It was just because everybody's like, well, Hillary did this, or Trump did this, or, Ted Cruz is the, Zodiac killer, and blah, 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 blah. And you couldn't sit there and have a rational argument. And that's what I hate about this, is that there's no rationality behind it. And I think a lot of people sit behind this as, it reminds me of the like South Park episodes, where they show them playing like these World of Warcraft type games, and you have the guy they're playing against, at home, has like the little setup of the system, and it's like, well, actually, blah, 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 blah. And it's
Yeah.
funny. I'm going to bring up one more story. I'm going to let you tell a couple stories that you've had about it. So I'm sitting at training at work, right? And it's all of us salaried supervisors, okay, in this classroom. There's probably 30 of us. And we're talking about, Family Medical Leave Act and all this and the abuses behind it and so on and so forth. Well, this guy's like, well, you can record a conversation between you and an employee. And I'm like, whoa. I was like, no, you can't. Well, in the state of Indiana, it's only one person consent. And I said, you're a freaking idiot if you do that. I said, you're dumb. You're setting yourself up for the union just to like push your shit in, for lack of better terms.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, on Facebook, he says on Google, it says that. I said, oh, well, Google says I can, eat rocks or whatever, and it's good for me. I said, apparently that has to be right because it's on Google. And people start laughing, and this guy gets all butthurt about it. But that's essentially what it is that people might, I'm not even saying that, even emotional type conversations, people do research, but what kind of reliable links do they bring up? They don't bring up reliable links. Or, hey, if you have a thing of Dawn dish soap every day, your life's going to be by 20 years. And the source behind it is, dishsoap.com or something like that. I mean, it's kind of, I think for us, Mike, especially with our arguments, is that, we're college educated men, which doesn't mean shit. But for our papers and the discussions that we've had with folks is that we have to basically back up these points with empirical type evidence. And I don't think that's necessarily being done with these conversations on Facebook. And I'm going to give the table to you because I'm just going to keep talking. So,
well, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, me having a higher education doesn't necessarily mean I'm smarter than everybody else, but it has given me more of a critical way of looking at things and a way of thinking. I mean, when you're forced to cite peer-reviewed stuff like all the time, I mean, it just makes you dig deeper and find out what is actually a reliable source. And the people who are just Googling things and going, oh, found one, here it is, and I'm just going to regurgitate all this, there's probably 1,000 more that say the same or the opposite thing. You've got to really read these things and determine what's a valid source. And most valid sources will give you more than just the one side of information that you want to hear. I will not validate anything that just gives me one side of the story. Okay.
oh no, definitely not.
Well, yeah, you can't. I mean, how would you know that that's true? Okay, it fits what you already thought. That doesn't mean it's true. It means somebody else has the same idea as you. Doesn't mean it's true. Okay, and you'll find that all over the internet, and that's part of the new. Oh, I don't want to say millennial, but I mean it's just the new age way of thinking. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Social.
and it's not even indicative. Sorry to interrupt. It's not even indicative of millennials per se. It's indicative of everybody. Because we have all this quote unquote technology on it. You could be sitting there arguing with a grandmother in Alaska that's 85 years old, or you can be arguing with a 12-year-old on Facebook about something. And we essentially have the same informational bias to look at. I mean, that's just amazing.
Oh yeah. So I'll give you a real world example that didn't happen on social media. Okay. So like I said, sometimes I like to play devil's advocate. So I have a buddy of mine who's super into chemtrails. Okay. He is 100% conspiracy theorist chemtrail guy. All right. I work with him. Sorry, buddy, if you're listening. So he's super into chemtrails. I looked it up, did a bunch of research on it myself. And a bunch of research to me means, I probably spent 5 hours reading, okay, looking into it. Okay. So I basically learned about, how much heat is put out through engines and then the condensation that's built up and, ice and whatever. Okay. I understand how you get a vapor cloud, okay, in the sky, a condensation trail. Okay. So I presented him with these facts. Okay. I said, this is actually happening. So how can you tell me what is and isn't a chemtrail if they look very identical? Okay, because he just looks up in the sky and goes, oh, look, that one right there, chemtrail, blah, blah, blah. So I'm saying, how do you know? I just want to know how he knows. I'm asking for his professional opinion on chemtrails, okay? And he cites off like some total just randomness, like, oh, this is a chemtrail because of this, this, and this. And I'm like, well, you can't just say that, though. I was like, can you give me more proof of that? You can't just say it, because I understand you're saying it. I was like, but I have all these studies right here from like, legit scientists, people who specialize in the field of atmospheric pressures and that type of stuff. So give me something. Excuse me. And he got kind of upset about it. And I was like, I'm willing to learn the other side. I was like, maybe I don't know. I said, so please, if you have links, send me some links and I'll happily do the reading, And so I got these links, right? And you could immediately tell just from the name of the link, the URL, that it was completely biased. I mean, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it was like chemtrailsarereal.org.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it was really hard to take it serious at that moment. And, I started having a talk with him, and it got a little heated, because sometimes when I can argue slightly aggressive sometimes, especially in person. And and if I start to notice that what you're giving me is so blatantly biased, I just have to really just hammer that down. You know what I mean? Because you can't be sitting here spitting off stuff and it's just so blatantly biased. I mean, if you're gonna preach to me about chemtrails, then you better have some like studies or something of validity to give me that I can go, oh man, you may actually be right. But if you send me a .org link or like a .net or or something that has like the bias in the title, like chemtrailsarereal.org, chemtrails are killing us.com, you know what I mean? You can't take that as a valid source because they are clearly only giving you one side of the information. You know what I mean? I want to see both sides. I want to see somebody that goes, well, we measured this over here and we got different results over here, and this could have been because of this, and we noticed these couple things. You know what I mean? I want specifics. I don't want you to send me a link that says this is my opinion.com. Okay. I want to know the real stuff. So I mean, I used to buy into the whole chemtrail thing. I know that we do weather modification. I've read that. I've seen that. They acknowledge that's a thing. But as far as like what the extent of the conspiracy theorists are about chemtrails, I don't buy into all of it. Not after all the research I've done. And they've done specific studies because of these theories. And the overwhelming studies that are in favor or against chemtrails. I mean, it's just overwhelming. So I presented him with all that. He got really mad and we stopped talking for the rest of the day.
Did you guys finally make up on it?
Oh yeah. It just took, overnight. We had to sleep it off.
That's funny, because one of the articles I was reading here, they say with the Facebook conversations, right? There's a difference between text and actually talking in person, right? Kind of like what we're doing. Okay. And the way with
keyboard
the text,
warrior.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I have a meme for that, but it's kind of funny what you're saying, about the bias type websites. Whenever we had Dr. Anna on our program, she was talking about, David Avocado Wolf, which is one of these guys. It's like, hey, drink hand sanitizer for a week and your skin's going to be perfect, and just all these wild like pseudoscience type things. But here's the argument I get a lot of times, Mike, whenever I sit here and confront somebody about this stuff. They say, well, the information you're getting, it's biased. That my peer-reviewed articles by doctors that have been through the whole process on it is biased. However, David Wolf's Avocado Emporium is correct, and that is a sole source of information. And I like how you brought it up too, is that I'm not opposed to looking at a topic that I might previously thought is how should you say it, stupid.
Right. You can't be so blatantly biased in your own opinion that you're not willing to think for a moment that you could actually be wrong. If you're not willing to agree with yourself that there's a chance you could be wrong, then you're so blatantly biased you can't even have an open discussion about it.
Exactly right. And that's the thing, a lot of these people are like, well, this is my point and I can't look the other way. And it comes down to like just a lot of different facets in society. Politics is a real large one. The United States is one of the largest countries in the world with the least amount of political parties in their bicameral government. And that blows my mind. There's 330 plus million people here. And we have two political parties that are prominent. I mean, that blows my mind.
Yeah.
How, and everyone's like, well, the Republicans are better because of this, and the Democrats are better because of this. They're both the fucking same. They're both the same.
Yeah,
It
I'm like,
doesn't
they both hate
matter.
you. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah. I mean, these guys don't go into politics to be better. A lot of these people go into politics to make money through the lobbies. Why do you think marijuana is not illegal? Why do you think that we have opioid medication? I mean, you could just go on and on and on and on, but people do not want to hear that because they are so set in their ways,
Yeah.
and they're not willing to take that look because it's an adversarial approach to a lot of this stuff, Mike. It's that, well, I'm right, you're wrong, and I am going to go on defense right out the gate. I don't want to learn. I don't want to learn. I don't want to hear your point because my point is right. I cannot be wrong. And I think that's the way probably, I would say 85% of the conversations on Facebook are.
Yeah. And have you listened to any of Jordan Peterson's stuff?
I have not.
He's you would enjoy him. He's a clinical psychologist, has been for many years, 30 plus years, I believe. And, that's the guy out of Canada who, anyway, you should look him up. He's awesome. But I enjoy the way that he speaks because he is very fact-based. And if he doesn't know, he says, I don't know, or he'll have to look into it, or the studies aren't conclusive. And he comes off to me as very fact-based. And one thing I find in arguments with people I've had over Facebook and in person is they always try and when they realize they're being backed into a corner and they don't actually have any facts, this is what they say. They say something along the lines of, well, what makes you right? What makes you so sure you're right? And the only response I have to that, and this is so good, and I hope you use it and everybody uses it, is that all you can do is simply acknowledge that I acknowledge that I could be wrong. I also acknowledge that I could be right. You, on the other hand, are acknowledging that you're not wrong, and you haven't acknowledged that you could possibly be wrong. You're stating your opinions and your emotions as facts, whereas I do understand I could be wrong, and I'm only trying to point out that you don't understand that you could be wrong, and you're making blatant statements. And I'm trying to really get away from that because I'm so tired of hearing it. I used to do it a lot too, and I'm cutting it out of my vocabulary. No more opinions.
No more opinions. Yeah, and I mean, it's social media. You take there's a difference, and you brought it up earlier about the social media warriors, the keyboard warriors, right? Dude, go on YouTube and read comments on videos. And that tells
God, it's hate, just such hate.
Dude, that tells you the state of the society that we live in. Because people aren't going to tell other people that in person, right? But it's like, hey, you're an N-word, this and blah, 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 blah. And I mean, just saying really disparaging things. And people, they have the cloak. They feel like they have a cloak of protection via social media. You know what I'm saying? And that's what kills me. It's like, man, be respectful of folks in a way. I mean, if something sucks, tell them why it sucks and go on. But I mean, you're sitting here using like racial slurs and just like vulgar, nasty language, something I wouldn't even like call, the most vile person in the world. I mean, it's amazing. And I think it's just a societal thing.
Oh, yeah.
Really. So Mike, all right. So I was thinking of this. Okay. So me and you have conversations a lot on Facebook.
Yeah.
And we discuss topics, and I'm sitting here saying, well, I'm obviously right because of this, that, or the other type deal, but here, I hate saying this, and I said it last week too, but even with Trump now, I'm starting to look a little bit introspectively in it. He's not the greatest. More so, whenever Trump got elected, is like, Jesus Christ, this is going to be fucking terrible. This is going to be terrible. This guy doesn't know what the hell he's doing. He's a reality TV star. He doesn't know how to be political. But, more so with my political views being more so in the libertarian realm, he is almost quite libertarian, probably one of the most libertarian type presidents we've had in the last 50 years.
He is a pot stirrer, and I like that he's showing everybody's true colors.
Oh, yeah. And see, and about this wall thing, I don't agree with it. However, he's willing to make a compromise with that, with the DACA, the Dreamers Act that Obama had.
They totally crapped on that though immediately.
Oh yeah, they're like, well, it's our way, and it comes back to different arguments. Where's the compromise in a lot of this? It's not for the wellness of a nation type deal. There's already a fence at the border, okay?
Yeah.
In most places, there's already a fence down there. It doesn't necessarily work. A wall to me is very archaic in a way.
Hmm.
However, maybe there's different technology that we could use that would be more cost productive instead of prohibitive. But people, they don't want to hear it. They say, well, we just need to let people just come here. Okay, that's fine in a way.
Then what? Yeah.
And
Then
then
what?
what? Then what? Right? And that's how it happens. And you have these. And for me, immigration is a very fucking sore subject. Very sore subject. Just because of the process that me and my wife have been through. More so,
Oh yeah.
you sit here, you fill out all this paperwork, you give them so much, you have to show for ours, for like the initial package on a lot of this stuff, right? I have to put everywhere I've lived in the last like 5 years or something like that. I had to show them 3 years of tax returns. I had to show evidence of a relationship. You know what I'm saying? Like, I
Right.
actually know this person. I'm just not, getting me gosh, I hate saying this. And this is not to discourage, this is not to, I'm just not going to say it. I'm going to get, I'm getting a foreign bride to be,
Right.
and you go through that process, right? So you spend X amount of money there, and then you come in and you have to upgrade your visa, or you have to upgrade your permanent residency, and that costs X amount of money. And then you have to do this, and then you have to do that. And then if you don't make a certain amount of money, I think at the time, whenever I went through it, I hadn't even checked in years, but like you had to make 125% over the poverty line in the United States. So that being,
Jeez.
yeah, 125% over the poverty line, which I mean, the poverty line was $30,000 or $40,000, but still, right?
Yeah.
And you had to make that for 10 years. Okay.
Jeez.
Yeah, dude. And here, check this out too, right? So you get your permanent residency card, and this is what pissed me off, right? So they got 2 cards, one for Evie, one for Shelly, right? Well, I got one for Shelly. Evie's card never came.
Mm.
And like, oh, that's weird. And we started calling, right? Shelly called the USCIS, United States Customs Enforcement, blah blah blah, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would be on the phone for hours and then get cut off, or be on the phone and they give them wrong information, right? And then finally, once we got everything set on that, they said, okay, I had to pay, what was it, another $600 for another card that I never received.
Dude.
That I never received. They said, well, it was there. I said, why didn't the postal agency like send this off? And they don't even send it in like a trackable type package. You know what I'm saying? Like the stuff I get from Amazon is more trackable than these letters. And you're spending like thousands of dollars on this stuff, right? I mean, it's just a racket, So
Yeah.
I see why people come to this country. You know what? America is the land of opportunities, and I don't care what people say, whatever, well, it's a shithole. Okay. You want to live in a shithole? Go live in the fucking Philippines. No offense to any Filipinos that listen to this. Go live in Korea. Korea's not the best place to live. Go live in Mexico. These people come here for an opportunity. And a lot of the research I've shown is that, a lot of people come here legally and then their visas expire.
Yeah.
Okay. But a lot of what the media perpetuates is that, these people are just, running across the border all nilly-willy. That's not necessarily the case. Now, I think a way to kind of curb a lot of that is to legalize drugs. Legalize them all. Legalize them all. You think the cartels are going to come here when you got a saturated market that you're not going to make money on anyways? That's fucking stupid. I wouldn't. I'd be like, well, I guess I got to go somewhere else now.
Money talks.
Yeah, let nature do its work. If you want to sit there and do meth, as long as you're not hurting anybody else, and you're only hurting yourself, you know what, man? Smoke all the meth you want to smoke. But then people would be like, well, I saw on this methsmokers.com page that, meth is great for this, that, or the other. And it kind of comes back to the arguments on that. But the thing is, if I brought those points up on Facebook in a post, like if I just typed up basically everything I said to you, put it on a post, my thread would go nuts.
Oh, you'd get eaten alive.
Nuts. Well, why do you think that? My cousin, sister, brother's uncle, mother, was, they got tripped by somebody that took their job. Like, really, dude? Like that's what you're going off of, you know? That's what I don't
Yeah.
get, Mike. I just everyone thinks they're right.
Yeah, I'm totally fine with people having their own political views and their own political opinions. I just have problems when they blatantly state things. This happened the other day on Facebook, and I know I tagged you in it too. Um, there was a couple people basically saying the majority of Americans don't want the wall. The majority of Americans hate Trump. And those are just very open, closed statements. Like how can you make that statement for anything? Obviously, there hasn't been a study or a poll that I would call valid that has talked to every American or even a vast majority of Americans. I mean, usually these studies or polls that they take are only like a couple thousand people.
Yeah, if that, you can look at these polls that they take, a Gallup poll talk to X amount of people, and it comes back to our statistical views on a lot of this. Any data
Yeah,
set,
they
any
talk to this many people in New York, so obviously they're Democrat.
right, and then they talk to somebody in Alabama, in like rural Alabama. I mean, there's no way to delineate the the whole population.
Oh
There's
yeah.
absolutely no way. Now, if you had um, a survey or a poll that you gave somebody a link to, like, hey, here's the text link on it, and we'll have this survey for 6 months, and the respondents are maybe half of the United States or 75% of the United States, I would believe those numbers a little bit more than one of these polls like we're talking about, 1,000, 2,000, maybe 3,000 people tops.
Well, yeah, I told this guy the other day in the same Facebook thread. I said, if you're about to quote some poll, I'm like, you better have a really good source. I was like, because we've already seen in the past how bad polls work. Going back to the election, every single poll that was ever taken during the Clinton and Trump presidency, during that campaign, all those polls basically pointed right to Clinton. Every
Oh,
poll said
oh yeah.
Clinton's going to lead, Clinton's going to win, which is why everybody was so devastated when Trump won, because they thought they had it in the bag. They were basically, and again, I don't know if this is true, but this is what it looks like to me. It looked like they were making polls, okay, that were clearly in favor of Clinton and pushing them as, this wide view. And no, that is not the case. I mean, he won with a landslide. I mean, it was crazy. I even thought Clinton was going to win.
Oh yeah, same here. I went to bed and the numbers were like, I was like, dude, this dude doesn't have a chance. And then my wife woke me up at like 2 a.m. She's like, Donald Trump's president. I said, excuse me. I thought she was messing with me. I was like, she doesn't wake me up for anything, obviously.
Yeah.
But she woke me up. She's like, Trump's president. I was like, you got to be fucking kidding me. And lo and behold, I turn it on and he's giving his acceptance speech.
Yeah, I don't think it would have been such a big deal if the media didn't have such a bias push against Trump and then for Clinton. It was insane. And it was right then I realized, I mean, I had suspected for a long time, but I mean, the media is just so in bed with corporations, and it's so fake, man. It's so biased on both sides. I don't care what news outlet you're looking at. It is biased. It is so biased. They should not be giving opinion. They should be giving fact. And that's it.
Yeah, but that'll facts don't sell, Mike. You got to sensationalize a lot of this,
I know, but people, I don't know if I should say lesser minded people, but I get
closed mind. We'll say closed minded.
Okay, so closed-minded people don't take the time to look into these things, and it's really frustrating for me. So what I've been doing lately is I've got friends who will post articles and then state some BS claim in their comment above the article, and okay, so I'll look at that, I'll read the article, and then if it's clearly biased, I just tell them, I'm like, look, this is pretty biased. And then I'll look up some data on my own and kind of give them the other side of it. This happened. I think we've talked about it on another podcast. Maybe this happened about Joshua Tree. They posted some article that was like, because of the government shutdown, this sacred tree in the Joshua Tree State Park was cut down. Okay, well, The article didn't say anything else about how many trees are cut down or how many crimes are happened in this state park year round. It just said this one thing. It took a very short time frame and said this happened because of this. Well, that's not true. It didn't happen because of that. If somebody wants to chop a tree down, they're just going to chop a tree down. It has nothing to do with the government being shut down. Do you think if the government was open, that person would go, you know what? I have no desire to chop trees down anymore. I mean, that's just not how it works.
No, it's not. And then you see the photos of like these national parks, like just filled with garbage, filled with garbage. The garbage hasn't been taken out. I'm sorry. You know what? I think we talked about this last week. You know,
Yeah.
I was an outdoorsman, pretty heavy for quite some time. You know, I like to hike. I'd like to backpack camp, stuff like that. And I would not just leave trash. It doesn't matter. You pack in what you pack out,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. So to me, it's like, well, maybe somebody's going there, and who knows where the trash can is. And I think it comes back to your point is that we cannot clearly discern what is fact and what's fiction, and that's the thing. You know, people don't look into it that way. And it's funny for me, anyways, is because my view on it is like my state's motto. I am a proud Missourian. I am the show me state. Show me.
Yeah.
You might, you know, and that's what I hate. And you brought this point up too about, you know, very biased type sources. Is that I've sat here before and somebody's like, well, I got this holistic whatever. And I'm like, dude, it's from like holisticweekly.com. How is this a viable source? Well, how do you know your sources are viable? And then it just comes down to a match where people don't want to learn. Well, it's kind of like last night. I was scrolling through the Facebook webs and I saw something about meditation and it helps the power of the universe or something like that. And I'm not going to name names, but I think I gave enough information on what it was. You know, I mean,
Right.
it's like, dude, come on, man. I mean, you can believe what you want to believe. That's fine. But whenever it's like this crazy, nah, dude, nah. And that's what I don't like about it. And then what I'm thinking of here when I was listening to a podcast actually a while back on conspiracy theories, I'm going to kind of round this back. Tyler, which we've had on the show before, that runs Secret Time with Tyler. He was talking to a guy that was he was a friar in the Catholic Church for like a decade, right? And had information just on like crazy stuff that you would never believe, like we'll just say like lizard people and stuff like that. But the way the media portrays a lot of these, let's just say popes, right? Pope, the last two popes we had a Pope Benedict the 16th, right? And his reign was from 2005 to 2013. And right now we have Pope Francis, right? Pope Benedict pretty much aligned with the Catholic Church values, but he was like trying to make changes, dude. Like he knew there was pedophiles, he knew there was this, he knew it was that, and he tried to do a lot of work with that. And guess what happened? They're like, well, he's a terrible pope, and he's this, and he doesn't like that, and he doesn't like this, and he doesn't like that. And then we get Pope. Sorry, what was his name? Let me look here. Sorry about that. Pope Francis. Sorry.
Yeah.
And he's quote unquote progressive and this, that, and the other. Dude, stick to a point and stick to it. But they love this dude. They love Pope Francis. Absolutely love him. This guy's the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's like I don't understand it. And religion takes a whole different reign on this, I guess. And maybe it's not a rabbit hole we want to go down today, but
no, I mean, I am not a fan of what's been going on, especially with the kids and stuff. I mean,
it's widespread, man. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah, it's really gross. But coming back to facts, opinions, false claims, or even unattested claims. So I've got some definitions here, so at least we can get some common ground and agree on what these terms mean. So, what is the fact? A fact is defined as a statement about the real world supported by convergent evidence. So facts can be empirical, analytical, evaluative, or metaphysical. Okay. An opinion is self-report or attitudinal statements. A false claim would be a statement about the real world refuted by the evidence. So basically, people having an opinion or making a claim that is clearly refuted by, true evidence. And then the last one is the unattested claim. So it's this this happens a lot, and I honestly do unattested claims, but I acknowledge that they are not factual. So
Right.
Usually comes across as vague, ambiguous, or incomplete claim or factual claim for which evidence is yet unavailable. So I do those. I do unattested claims, but I usually do that in the argument of somebody making a false claim. And I acknowledge that mine is, vague, but it's also to prove that theirs is also false. And they should at least acknowledge both sides of that. So I'm just kind of I just get so frustrated with it, especially when it's so close to home. I mean, I have family members that do the same thing, and I'm like, well, you can't say that. You shouldn't say it that way. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, if you say it this way, it means more like what you're trying to say. You should say things if you're not sure, or if it's an opinion, you should say I think, or maybe, or it's possible that. You shouldn't state it as such a hard fact statement. That's really hard for me to chew these days. And maybe I'm just being too critical of people. Maybe I shouldn't really care that much.
Well, I mean, yes and no. People are going to have their opinions, Mike. And for somebody to change those opinions, it's a very, very small percentage that people will actually change their views on that and how they gather information and how they advance the information. And that's what I don't get too, is that, I put facts up here. Vaccinations. My big kick lately has been vaccinations, right?
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
You're like you're a keyboard warrior on Facebook about vaccinations. I've seen all your memes.
Oh, yeah. And a lot of it is to just give the discussion behind it. Okay. But it doesn't come across that way. People are like, well, I can't believe this. Little Billy had a shot one time and now he can't shoot a basketball or something. Okay.
Right.
Correlation isn't causation. Okay. It's just not. And people don't see it that way. And they look at these biased sources and go from there. And there's even stuff I read that is peer reviewed. And I'm like, dude, this is shit. This is not valuable information. Like, okay, I'm glad you took the time to research it from what you've researched. But Mike, we've both written a lot of papers in our life, a shit ton of papers. Okay. I can make a topic look vanilla. I can make a topic look chocolate. I can make a topic look strawberry. It just depends on the sources that I use and how I word things.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of peer-reviewed articles, only because I've read so many now that I've realized you can just fill them with BS and still get peer-reviewed. I mean, who was it? It was wasn't it? Oh no, they were on the Joe Rogan show. There's these two guys came on the Joe Rogan show, and they're basically laughing about they made these outrageous articles, submitted them, and then got them peer reviewed and accepted into the university. But they were basically just stating like it was all about making fun of genders and things, and how you shouldn't claim your dog's gender and stuff. And they totally got it approved because it was full of bull crap. But I mean, it's like, so just knowing that, I'm not a huge fan of peer-reviewed stuff. I've read some really good ones, and I've read some really bad ones that are like, is this for real? Is this what we're doing today?
Oh, yeah, exactly. I've read papers about, cognitive psychology and about, if you sit here and eat cilantro on odd days of the month or whatever, I'm just making an example, and I've never read anything to this effect, but it just kind of like what you're talking about with the people there, you can make the information as long as you cite sources and put it into an objective type paper. More so, Mike, maybe with the peer review stuff, since you got on this topic, and it's a rather interesting topic, is that maybe the peer review papers are playing to the agenda of where it's submitted to.
Oh, well, that's totally true. Depending on the university you submit it to, if it follows in suit with their viewpoint, then great. And this happened with these same people I was just telling you about on the Joe Rogan show. They had submitted a couple of them, and they got, so basically, okay, so people who don't know the process of a peer-reviewed article. So basically, you write a paper, you submit it to the university. It goes through an initial panel review. If it passes them, it goes down to get peer reviewed. Okay, if it doesn't, then they mark it for changes, send it back to you. You make the changes, send it back to the university. They'll review it, and then once they pass them, it goes down to the peer reviewed, and then you do this back and forth until you make all the corrections that they want. So basically, they got a paper back, and the issue was that it didn't fall in line with their current viewpoint. So they made it like outlandishly worse. They went super far to their end of the spectrum, and then it passed just because they made it worse. You know what I mean? They took it to the extreme, and that's what they were looking for. And then it got accepted as a peer-reviewed article. So there's definitely, like you're saying, biased or who you send it to, you know, what university is going to take it in. It could be the same study even, and then the same field, you know, but a different university has different viewpoints. So it's definitely really weird. Not a fan.
You know what? I find it interesting. You know, I know a lot of these, you know, scholars and whatnot have papers toward a certain university. I would like it to send to like 10, send it to 10, or sorry, 11, send it to 11 universities, right? And if the majority sign off on it, then you're good. If the majority don't sign off on it, then make the applicable changes. But then you get into the fact, well, okay, I sent it to 11 private parochial schools. Okay, I sent it to like Notre Dame, St. Louis University, Gonzaga, places like that, you know, that are like super, super religious type schools. Or I sent it to like super hippie schools almost, right? I sent it to Berkeley. I sent it to Colorado, Boulder. I sent it to somewhere on the East Coast, you know. I don't get it. And I don't think you're necessarily going to have something that is 100% true in this day and age. It's just not going to happen. You just need to take the time to research what you can and just make your points as validly and as respectfully as possible. And I think a lot of people, like we've talked about earlier, they take defense right off the bat whenever you question their viewpoint.
Well, yeah, I mean, and here's what I've gathered about those people. Well, maybe it's not what I've gathered, but more so my opinion or my thought of them. If you're so willing to stick behind your opinion or what you're claiming, then why are you getting upset? If what you truly believe is true, wouldn't you want to educate the other person, right? So if you were to say something and I'm like, well, you know, I don't really believe that, and this is kind of what I've been finding, wouldn't you want to argue or at least you know, inform me? Like, maybe I don't know and I'm willing to learn. You know, I ask people all the time for information to at least show me what their point means, you know, not just say stuff, but like, can you give me more, you know, backing on that, you know, send me some links or something like that. But why get upset? Why do you think they get so upset? Is it emotion?
Oh, definitely. Most definitely. I mean, to get angry or to get startled or to get scared or to get upset, it's a human emotion. Something illicitly triggers that, okay? So, with that being said, is that maybe somewhere in their mind, they know that they're wrong, or they're just so oblivious to it, they believe they're right. And how could you possibly question my judgment on this because this is empirically 1,400% true?
Well, do you think people aren't used to being questioned? Do you think those people normally don't get questioned, or they stay so in tune with their own inner circle that when they reach out on social media and they have other opinions that don't agree with theirs, they're like so blown off by it?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. I mean, think about some of these communities, right? We'll just go to like we'll just say a predominantly Catholic community, okay? Their belief systems are going to align with the Catholic Church, okay? And when someone starts to question it, all hell breaks loose. And I mean, Mike, we can go back to the early ages of civilization, right? Where we had people thinking people were witches because they didn't believe in the Protestant Reformation. You know, we've had people, I would like to see a number of how many people have died because of a religion and or belief system.
Literally everyone.
Yeah, most definitely, because that aligns to somebody's point of view. You know, why do we go to war all the time? Well, we want to sit here and be defenders of freedom. No, that's bullshit. We want to sit here and make money because it aligns to our core values. And I think a lot of it comes down to core values, and people don't want to take the time to actually factually validate something. You know, we've seen this with 9/11. You know, you sit there, we have these attacks and everything, and fingers are pointed like that day, and a month later or 2 months later, we're in the Middle East looking for a guy in a cave, and we're in the Middle East overthrowing a dictator that daddy didn't like. It's just amazing, but you could sit there and garner support for this. I guess what I'm trying to say is that you can get behind an ideal whenever it's a popular ideal of the masses, and it kind of comes to the I read a book by Chomsky, and people are going to be like, Jesus, you're a hippie. But I read a book by Noam Chomsky. It's called
Hippie.
yeah, I know, right? It's called a hegemony. Is it hegemony? I don't know. I don't know how to say it, but basically, like assimilation into a culture based on everybody's the same, or they're the same as each other. So you have this hegemony. People are going to laugh. They're like, God, you're dumb. Or survival, right? So essentially, if you don't assimilate into a culture and you don't believe in the certain systems of it, you are in exile. Look at these major religions. Especially Islam comes to mind to me. Is that if you're not sitting there and following the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad to a T or within acceptable standards, you're screwed, dude. Why do you think they have such a power vacuum in a lot of these places where these religious caliphate fighters are? Well, they read their book, and their book says this, and you could say the same about the Bible. You could say the same about the Torah. You could say the same about any other religious text. You sit there and you have a group of people aligned with this, and they may not believe it 100% fully. However, to stay within the tribe and stay within the good graces and stuff like that, they believe it. And I think that's just like a modern sociological phenomenon.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question then.
Okay.
Do you think there will ever be a time where we move away from the emotional arguments or the opinionated opinionated arguments? I mean, are we going to get to a point where I guess people are more critical of the way they think, or has the internet ruined that?
At a 40,000-foot view, I believe the internet has ruined that, obviously, just from what we've seen. But I think it's a flaw in human character and human behavior, right? Is that we have lived for years with what our belief systems are in a lot of different things. I was raised a certain way, and my belief system and certain things are quite different than other folks. However, I've taken the time to kind of expand my horizons and think a little critically about what I've been taught. However, I think there's a level of comfort in this, right? There's a level of comfort to know that you're within the confines of the herd. You're within the confines of what you know and what you're comfortable with. Arguments, whenever you think of the word argue, to me, it elicits a reaction, okay? It elicits an angry type reaction. I'm not going to argue with somebody just
Well, yeah,
because,
it comes across aggressive when you say argument. It immediately sounds aggressive.
oh yeah, you're obviously on the defensive there. So me and you, let's just say we I don't know, we're looking at like,
Usually political things, because you and I differ a lot in political views.
oh yeah, obviously, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, this, that, or the other. How could you even say anything like that? And I say, well, I got this or that or the other. But you're not going to spend the time to argue with somebody just to bring points across. You're arguing with somebody because it disagrees with your views. I believe, anyways, it disagrees with your views and what you think is intrinsically valuable to you.
Oh, that's good. And that's actually probably true, because I don't normally argue someone if I don't think it will be worth anything. So, I mean, people make silly claims all the time on social media, and I don't argue every single one of them. But when they make such blatant things, I do try and correct them, or at least make them view that they're just because they have a heavy opinion doesn't mean that it holds any weight anywhere, like literally anywhere. It's just your opinion. And I hate seeing people go back and forth on these Facebook threads, they just continue to state the same things back and forth. No, this is what it is. And the other guy's like, no, this is what it is. So I usually try and chime in like, you guys both realize that these are opinions, right? I mean, neither one of you is right, neither one of you is wrong. But I think if you step back and just acknowledge that these are opinions, then you can't, the argument is done. There's no more aggressive argument. It's just a couple people stating their opinion in a poor way.
Yeah,
That's all it
exactly.
is.
That is a perfect way to put it. And here's the thing too, especially with the invent of social media and the internet and the age of learning, as I want to call it, or information, or even more so misinformation, right? Is that people empirically think they are correct, and that is something they hold value to, right? They hold value. I hold value knowing that these are my certain subsets of what I believe and whatnot. But at the same time, if you argue with me, then gosh darn, you don't like me, and it's a personal attack. And people, I guess what I'm trying to get at is people feel they're very self-important. Psychology has a term as ego or super ego in a way, okay? And it's more so with teens. Think about the teenagers, right? You're in a very egocentric world. You think everything revolves around you, and I think with the social media is that we believe, we have our Facebook pages or whatever, right? And we think what we put out there is important, and people should know that's important to us. But really, in the grand scheme of thing, we're just a series of binary code, zeros and ones to make this Facebook page, and where I put my memes up, or where I put my anti-vax type, agenda, or where I look at kitty photos, kittens, not
Gross.
kids. Yeah, kids, not kids, kittens. Sorry.
Oh, kittens. Okay, that's
Yeah,
okay.
not kitty photos. They're starting to think about our last podcast, but no. But anyways, I just think it's a slippery type slope, but people have a elevated sense of value on social media, in my opinion.
I like how you added my opinion. I'm about to hammer you down for that.
I know, dude. I had to think there. I was quick on my toes.
No, I think you're right. I mean, I think everybody wants to be heard, and everybody thinks that their opinion is important. And the second you show any inkling of maybe that opinion's not important, which isn't what I'm trying to do, I think everybody's opinion is important as long as you state it as opinion. I get really frustrated when the opinions slowly get transformed into statements that are being used as factual, and that theirs is somehow better than someone else's. When really, in the gist of things, nobody knows. I mean, you can argue politics all day, and you and I have gone back and forth at times, and you've definitely seen me go back and forth with people on Facebook when I'm keyboard warring over here. And I mean, you can go back and forth all day, but you have to acknowledge that neither one of you truly knows, right? I mean, these are just opinions. Nobody actually knows what's going on behind the scenes, unless you're in it, the people who are actually in the meetings, the private stuff behind closed doors. Other than that, it's speculation or hearsay. Okay. That's it. That's all it is.
That's beautiful. That is really beautiful. And while you're talking about that at the time, I have two words in my head, right? I have fact and opinion in my head. Okay. And what I see a lot of people doing is stating opinions and manifesting them into facts. And that is bad. That is very bad. However, what I would like to see is people have facts and derive their opinions off the facts that they have. You could be completely wrong, and it could be something I think you're 197 million% wrong on. But as long as you come to me with facts and say, these are the facts, and from these facts, in my opinion, I derive this, I'm cool with it. I'm cool with it. But people just don't see it that way, Mike. So I guess with kind of wrapping up here, what's your if you were to take anything away from this podcast today, what would be the advice that you would have?
I mean, the advice I would want to give people is think just a little bit more critically. Okay. I mean, just because you find one source or one outlet that agrees with what you've already thought, what you've pre-thought, look for something else. And something I found that people aren't doing is, let's say, I'm going to use chemtrails again. Okay. If you believe in chemtrails, why don't you Google search or do research in general on what else are they? Look up the opposite. Don't go, what are chemtrails? How are chemtrails formed? Because you will only get things that agree with your opinion. Look up something of the opposite. And this applies to everything, not just chemtrails. Look up something of the opposite, because once you have all the data, or all of these said facts from both sides, then you can form your own opinion on it. And it's a lot easier to get an educated opinion if you're looking at both sides, sources from both ends of the spectrum. And this goes, politically or whatever else you want to look at. Okay. I would be very careful with the blatant opinion statements that are being used as facts. I would like to see people with a more critical thinking. What about you, Josh?
Yes. You basically hit the nail on the head of what I was going to say. What I'd like to add on to that caveat, piggyback. I'd like to piggyback what Mike says. When's the last time you heard that term?
Roll call.
Roll call. Essentially, right, I think the society that we live in is that we make opinions facts in our mind, okay? So that's why people argue about things. If we didn't want to argue about stuff, and actually have fact-based discussions, I believe the world would be a better place, and social media would be a better place. As long as you have some sort of facts to validate your ideology, and it's not more so like shoving things down my throat based on what you believe. You say, hey, here's the facts here. This is what I have. This is what I think. In my opinion, okay. And I'm going to sit there and give my opinion based on the facts that I garner as well. And I really like the point that you made, is to sit there and find the anti-article of what you're trying to argue about or have a discussion about. Find the opposite side of the spectrum of chemtrails. Let's just use the chemtrails. Well, here, chemtrails are bullshit, or hey, chemtrails are awesome. And you find a middle ground, because there's a little bit of truth in both sides. And I don't think people want to really acknowledge that in a way. So for all of you Knuckle Dragon Billy Goat reviewers out there, just take a more critical approach to discussions on Facebook, and go more so from a fact base. Just start the discussion with, and give your opinions based on the facts, not on emotions. And I like that Mike brought this up, and it is this is a really great topic, Mike, and I appreciate your time on this. And as always, you can follow us on Facebook at the Knuckle Dragging Billy Goat Review. Also have an account at SoundCloud under the same name, and on iTunes under the same name. So, Mike, on this nice, cold, and snowy Sunday morning, peace out.
Later, buddy.